The first time I got drunk, I think I was 12 or 13, and I still remember it was, a six-pack of tall boys out by the railroad tracks. And I could not wait to do it. I'd heard so much about it, and I felt like my father was weak. And to me, alcohol and drinking seemed to be sort of a shortcut to toughness, to being a tough guy. With 25 years of experience on that sentiment, I feel differently. Alcohol made me incredibly weak. When I was 17, I had this epiphany when I was, riding the bus back from class, where I was dying of a hangover, but also I had this plastic jug of whiskey in the basement where I was living, and there was like 2 inches of liquor left in it. And I thought about it, and my mouth started watering. And I was like, I have a problem. It was all just party, 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 and now something's changed inside of me. And as a couple of years later, I was like, I'm going to have to deal with this at some point. But I saw some of my friends in their early 20s trying to quit drinking and failing and trying and failing. And it seemed like that was just the worst of both worlds. They were trapped in this purgatory where they were getting the hell of early sobriety and the hell of late drunkenness. And I think I just made up my mind that I was going to drink until I could drink no more, and then stop forever. And that's what I did. Humanity's history with intoxicants and intoxication goes back to before we were humans. Looking at how, monkeys, will just find fermented juices and drink them to catch a buzz, and elk and sheep have been documented, eating hallucinogenic mushrooms. I can only come to some understanding that getting messed up plays some role for us, that we learn something from it. And I think in our modern world, where many of us, wake up in a box, look at a box to check our email, get in a box to drive to another box, sitting in a box, staring at a box all day, to go home, to get back in a box, to go back home to see what's on the box. Chaos seems incredibly appealing after a conscripted life like that. And I think, modern people have a pervasive fantasy of, yeah, I'm just going to go out and just drink and be wild, be an animal, just run through the streets half naked and give free rein to all the things that we button up, or that we stick in the closet, or that we have to conceal in our polite sort of modern life. And that's fine. I don't think that alcohol is evil. For me, it's absolutely evil. But alcohol is a privilege, and it's not a right. And if you abuse that privilege, it will get taken away. And man, did I abuse that privilege. But telling a nonfiction story is closer to carving a block of wood. You approach it with an idea of what you're going to write or what story you're going to tell, but the wood has a mind of its own. And as you get into the process, you'll see that, well, no, there's a warp to it, that it turns that way. And you can fight it and be really unhappy with the result, or you can listen to the material and follow the grain. This book is basically how I drank hard for almost 20 years and then stopped drinking without AA or rehab, and then how I used running as a tool to get my head better, to become a human being again. But when I dove into the process of writing it, I had to write in detail, not just I drank, period, full stop, but how I drank and why I drank. And so much of that was tied into a subject that I had zero interest in writing about, which is my father and my relationship with my father, and how that, how that had weighed on me. And so there is a lengthy subplot about delving into my family history, and I found out that some very pivotal events in my life, events that I had sort of hung my personality on, were not what I had imagined them to be or what I had remembered them to be. The common perception is that writing or intoxication or drinking and writing or creativity are sort of bound together, and I think that's a bunch of garbage. When I was drinking, and I kept notes on little napkins and stuff like that, but the amount that I wrote while I was drinking it's pathetically little. I was just drinking. And when I stopped drinking, I found, oh my God, I have so much writing, so much narrative, so much story bottled up inside me that I've sort of kept in there, preserved, like it was, soaked in formaldehyde. That said, a lot of that writing and a lot of that material comes directly from my experience, being a penniless drunk. And I have to be careful about that, because when I'm teaching writing, I feel like I have to be careful to coach my students that in order to be a writer, or in order to be a nonfiction writer, a memoir writer, a life writer, you need to have life experience. You need to go out and do things. You need to get your heart broken. You need to love someone. You need to invest, engage, have adventures. You don't need to be tripping on cough syrup while you're doing that. The longer a story gets, the more pressure there is on the foundation, and the more the errors that you make in the first, in the opening, in the first chapter, the first couple of chapters, the more that's magnified down the line. So you have to sort of continually be tightening and shoring up and making sure that the integrity of the story and of the narrative is preserved. And there's, the longer a story gets, you're presented, it's this garden of forking paths. There's a million different ways, to get lost. And then the more the narrative expands in the middle of the book, the more work you have to do to really rope it in at the end, to wrap it up, and to say, that's all, folks, and then get off stage. So yeah, this was a tremendously exhausting process, writing a book. And also, it was worth it. There are a few things in life that are good that aren't worth working for. When I got the real physical book of I Swear I'll Make It Up to You, I was hanging out with my oldest friend, Zach, who's in the book, and I hit him with it. And he was like, that hurt. And I was like, yeah, it's a thing, man. I have a thing now. It's a great feeling.